Let me ask you something. Have you got ever been standing in front of VFD? One that's been running just fine for months and it suddenly start tripping on an over voltage fault. Every single time the motor deaccelerates, you reset it, it runs, you slow down the load again and create fault. Again reset, run, fault. Frustrating, right? Or maybe you we got a braking register that keeps burning out, you replace it. The 6 months later, it's dead again. Your maintenance team is starting to wonder if there something wrong with the drive itself. There is not. The real issue is that nobody designed the braking system properly for the load in the first place. So today I am going to change that. We are going to talk about the two main technology that solve this system. Dynamic braking registers and regenerative braking units. By the end this time in this video ends, you are going to know exactly which one belongs in your application, why and what mistake to avoid when you specify it. Okay? No whiteboard, no formulas, just clear, honest engineering conversation, which is what this channel about. Okay, so let's go. First, what makes a load high interior? Real example. Okay, first topic is my. First, let's make sure we are on the same about what high interior actually means, because it's one of those terms and that engineers throw around without always explaining what it means in practical terms. Interior in the context of rotating machinery is just how much the load resists change and its rotational speed. Okay, a load with high interior wants to keep spinning and takes a lot of energy to get it up to speed, and it takes a lots of energy to bring it back down. Think about a large centrifugal fan, the kind you see in HVAC system or industrial ventilation. That fan impeller may be a meter or more in diameter, made of steel, spinning at 1500 rpm. That's a lot of mass moving fast in a circle. When you tell the VFD to stop, all that rotational energy has go to somewhere. Or think about a centrifugal in pharmaceutical plant or food processing facility, spinning at thousands of rpm with a significant loaded mass, or a overhead crane lowering a heavy load, where gravity is continuously trying to accelerate on the load downward and the drive has to resist that. Or a proper winding machine, a large roll of paper being wound up that has a more and more interior as the roll gets bigger. Okay, these are all high interior loads, and the thing they all have is common this way. When you try to okay, slow them down, they push back. The push electrical energy back into drive, and that's where problem starting. So here is most engineer don't think about during commissioning. They set up the drive, they run the motor in the motoring direction, everything looks fine, then they deaccelerate the motor first time under the full load and the VFD trips on over voltage, and they confuse because of the drive is working fine a second ago. The load is what changes and the braking energy has now there go. So next, what happens inside the VFD when you slow down in a big load? Okay, to understand why braking is a problem, you need a mental picture of what happening inside a VFD during deacceleration. And I promise this is simple than its sound. Okay, a variable frequency drive has three main sections: on front you got the rectifier, that's where incoming AC power from grid get convert to DC. Okay, in the middle you we got the DC bus. Think of it as a big electrical storage tank, a reservoir of DC voltage sitting at roughly 650 volt to 700 volts on a standard 480 volts drive. Okay, and on the output side you we got the inverter, the part that takes that DC voltage and creates the variable frequency AC output that controls the motor speed. Okay, during normal operation when the motor is running up to speed or holding speed, okay, power flow from left to right and from the grid through the rectifier into DC bus through the inverter to the motor consumes power, everything is fine. Okay, now there what happening, you command a deceleration. The drive start reducing its output frequency, telling the motor to slow down, but the load, that big spinning fan, the loaded centrifuge, okay, does not want to slow down. It still has all that rotational energy, and what happens physically is that the motor transitions from being a motor to being a generator. Okay, the load keeps pushing motor stop. The motor, now in generator mode, converts that mechanical energy back to into electrical energy. In that, electrical energy flows backward from the motor back through the inverter section and into the DC bus. Okay, so the DC bus voltage start rising. It's got above its nominal level 650 volts, 680 volts, 720 volts, and if get to around 800 volt on 480 volts class drive. The drive's protection circuit kick the shut everything down. Okay, that's the over voltage fault. Okay, the load was simply trying to give energy back. There was now therefore what to energy go to. Next, the energy problem. Where does all that motion go? Before I talk about the solution, I want to make you sure really feel the scale of energy problems here, because I think a lot of engineers underestimate it until they we seen a failed braking resistor for first time. Let me give you analogy. You know how a car brakes work. When you driving at 100 kilometers an hour and you press the brake pedal, the brakes have to absorb all kinetic energy of that moving car and convert it into heat. The brakes pad get hot, the the rotor gets hot. Okay, if you are going to downhill and braking consistently, they can get dangerously hot. That's why trucks have runaway truck ramps on mountain passes. Okay, a large industrial fan or centrifugals had similar amount of store energy when it's spinning at full speed. Not exactly same, but in the same ballpark. And when you deaccelerate it, that energy has to go somewhere. So the question is, does go energy into heat like car brake pedal, or does into it go to back in somewhere useful? Okay, dynamic braking resistor are the car brake analogy. Okay, the energy becomes heat. Regenerative units are like a car that has a regenerative braking and send that energy back to charge the battery. Okay, except instead of a battery, the energy goes back into the electrical grid. Okay, neither answer is wrong. It's completely depend on how often you are braking, how much energy is involved, and what your priorities are: cost, simplicity, or energy efficiency. So that's what we are going to work through today. Okay, so next point is dynamic braking resistor, how they actually works. Alright, let's talk about dynamic braking registers, because this is technology most people encounter first and the one that causes the most confusion when it fails. The concept is straightforward. When the DC bus voltage rising during deceleration, because the motor is pushing back into energy the drive, we need the way get rid of that energy quickly. A dynamic braking resistor does exactly the one thing. It gives that energy somewhere go inside the drive. The sometimes in separate module connected to the drive there is a braking chopper. This is essentially a fast switching transistor, the same type of component that controls output to your motor. When DC bus voltage climb above certain level, let's say 715 volts on standard 480 volts drive, this braking chopper switch and on connect the external braking resistor across the DC bus. VFD flows from high voltage DC bus through the resistor. The resistor convert that electrical energy to heat. Okay. The DC bus voltage drop back down to a safe level. The chopper switch off a few milliseconds later. The voltage, if the voltage climb again, the chopper switch back on. This happens very rapidly. The chopper is switching on off mainly times per second through the entire deceleration. Okay, maintaining DC bus voltage is safe a window. From the motor's perspective, it feels a control electrical load against its rotation, which translates to control braking torque. The motor slows down smoothly, the drive does not trip, the load stops safely. The braking resistor itself a purpose-built component, typically stainless steel ribbon wound into grid on a wire wound element in housing. It's designed to handle rapid extremely temperature cycling. When the chopper is active, the resistor gets very hot very fast, then it's cool. Then hot again. This thermal cycling is what eventually fatigues the resistor and causes to it fail. One more thing worth understanding, in many modern drives, the braking chopper transistor is already built into the drive. You just need to connect the external resistor to two terminals, usually labeled PNPB or plus and BR. In larger drives, the chopper might be separate external module. Either way, the resistor is what does the actual energy work. Next point, why braking registers fail and nobody notice until until the VFD trips. Here is where things go wrong in real installation, and I want to be really honest about this because it's caught out a lot of experience in engineer, not beginners. The dynamic register fails silently when a register fails, and the most common failure mode what called an open circuit, meaning the register element breaks internally. The drive has not idea, it's keep running, the motor keeps running, everything seems fine. Okay, until the next time you will deaccelerate. When the next deceleration happen, the DC bus voltage rise, the braking chopper switch on and is trying to push current through the resistor, but the resistor is broken internally, no flows current, the energy has now there go, the DC bus voltage keep climbing, over voltage fault and again trip. So now here is cruel part, if the maintenance team does not about the failed register, they are going to assume the something wrong with the drive. They all reset it, it all run fine, because it run fine, it only fails during deacceleration. They might spend hours troubleshooting the wrong thing. The other failures mode is thermal overload. If the register undersized for the duty, meaning it's being asked to absorb the more energy more often that it was rated for its overheat. Most resistors have thermal cutout, a fuse-like device that disconnect the resistor when it gets too hot to prevent on fire. When that trips, the braking circuit is open again. Same result, overvoltage fault on the next deceleration. Next point is how to know if your resistor size right. No math, no, only just logic. Okay. Lots of engineers ask me how do I know if my braking resistor is sized correctly, and they expect complicated answer involving formulas and calculation. But let me give you the practical field level answer. There are three things to tell you a register size is correctly without doing any calculation. First, the drive does not trip on overvoltage during deceleration. If your drive trip every time you decelerate and the resistor is connected at working, the resistor either can't dissipate energy fast enough, meaning the resistance too high, it's already failed. Check the resistor first. Second thing, the second, the resistor get warm but not dangerously. Okay, dangerously hot. A correct size resistor motor UV resistor get warm, sometimes uncomfortable warm during braking. That's more normal and as expected. But it's getting so hot you can see it's glowing or thermal cutout trips during every deceleration, the resistor is undersized for the duty cycle. You either need higher power rating, a lower resistance value, or both. Third is the resistor lasts for years without failing. If you are replacing braking resistor every 12 to 18 months, they are thermally undersized. A correctly sized resistor on a properly managed duty cycle at least 5 to 10 years or more. The most important thing I can tell you about resistor sizing with this: when in doubt, go bigger on power rating. Cost difference between a correctly sized resistor and a oversized one is small. The cost of a VFD trip, a production shutdown, and a emergency service call is not. Also, I cannot stress this enough. Never mount a dynamic braking resistor inside a sealed electrical enclosure. These things very hot in sealed panel, that heat build up. The thermal cutout trip almost immediately, and you wonder why your braking resistor braking does not work. Mount on the resistor outside in the panel a ventilated steel cage or separative ventilated enclosure. With IP protection, your drive manual will have guidance on this. Okay. Next point is dynamic braking application, where it's the right choice. I want to be clear about something. Dynamic braking register is the register is not inferior or outdated switch solution. For a large range of industrial application, it is the correct engineering choice. Simple, reliable, cost effective, and perfectly adequate. Okay. A centrifugal pump and blowers are great example. A large HVAC field fan might need to stop within a certain time window so that the damper can close before airflow reverses. Okay, you need controlled deceleration, a properly sized braking, and handle it is properly. The fan stop once or twice per day. Okay, the duty on register is very light and you will last for many years. Centrifugals in pharmaceutical or food applications, depending on how frequently they cycle. are often excellent dynamic braking application. If the centrifuge run at a batch, stop to unload, runs another batch, and does this say 6 to 8 times per seat, the register duty is manageable with correct sizing. Okay. Next, conveyor and material handling system with infrequent stopping are almost always dynamic braking application. The motor brakes, the conveyor stop, the product is loaded or unloaded, it is start again. The duty on the register is light and intermediate. Test stand for intermediate testing, where a drive runs a motor, load it, test it, stop and repeats every few minutes, can often use dynamic braking depending on the test cycle and the motor power. The key phase in all of these infrequent and intermediate dynamic braking excels when braking events are spaced out. The duty cycle is slow when you are not braking continuously or very frequently. When that changes, when the application demands constant or very frequent braking, that's when the dynamic braking register start to struggle and the case for regenerative technology start to build. Next point is regenerative units, the concept explained simply. Now let's talk about regenerative braking units, which some people call active front end drives, okay, for quadrant drive or regenerative converters. The name changes depending on the manufacturer, but the core idea is the same. Remember I said that the standard VFD has a rectifier at the front. That's the part that converts AC power from the grid into DC for the DC bus. Okay, in a standard drive, that rectifier made of diodes. Diodes are passive component. Current can only flow the one direction through them. In practical terms, this means power in standard drive can only flow the grid into the motor. It's one way street. Okay, a regenerative unit change that. Instead of passive diode at the front, a regenerative units use active transistors, especially IGBT, the same type of switching device used in output inverter. And unlike diodes, IGBT can be controlled. They can push current in either direction. So now the drive front end is bidirectional. During normal monitoring operation, it works exactly like standard rectifier. Power flow from the grid to the motor. During deceleration, when the drive is pushing drive back into the DC bus in front end transistor switch into reverse mode, they push that energy back out of AC supply grid in phase at the right voltage and frequency, as if the drive in is a source of power rather than a consumer. Think about it from the grid perspective. Normally, when the drive is running a motor, the grid supplying power. During braking with regenerative unit, the drive is actually returning power to the grid. Your electricity meter, a part that measure consumption, will actually slow down or briefly reverse during heavy regenerative braking events. That energy is genuinely recovered. How energy goes to the grid, goes to back to the grid without burning anything. One of the questions I get asked most often about regenerative unit is how does the drive actually synchronize with the grid and push energy back? Is not that complicated? The answer is yes. Technically, it's very sophisticated, but the end result is equivalent and simple. The regenerative units control the system is continuously, okay, monitoring that AC supply grid, its voltage, its frequency, its phase angle, all that times. The active front end transistor are switching in pattern that keeps the drive's interaction with the grid in synchronization. When the DC bus voltage rise because braking energy is coming back from the motor and immediately start pumping that energy out of grid in perfectly synchronized AC form. Okay, and there something that surprised a lot of engineers, a regenerative unit does not just improve braking, it just dramatically improves the drive's power quality. A standard VFD with a diode rectifier draw current from the grid in every non-ideal way. It creates harmonic distortion on the supply. It draw current at lagging power factor. That's why the large drives often need harmonic filters and power factor correction. A regenerative unit with an active front end draws current from the grid in nearly perfect sinusoidal way at near unity power factor. With very low harmonic distortion from the grid perspective, the drive looks almost like perfect resistive load, which is the gold standard for power quality. So the regenerative unit is solving the braking problem and improving the facility's power quality simultaneously. Okay, if your facility pays power factor penalties to the utility, a regenerative drives can reduce those charges if you are subject to harmonic distortion regulation. So subject to harmonic distortion regulation, IEE 519 is the standard in North America. EN 61000 applies in Europe. A regenerative drive often meet those requirements without additional harmonic filtering hardware. Okay. Next point is the honest cost conversion. When does Regen pay for itself? So let's talk about honestly its cost, because this is usually deciding factor in real project, and I don't want to oversell regenerative technology where it does not make sense. A regenerative drive costs roughly 2 or 4 times more than a standard drive of same power rating with a dynamic braking resistor. That's real money. On a 100 kilowatt drive system, you could be looking at additional investment anywhere from 15,000 to 1,50,000 rupees or more depending on the brand and the specification. So the question is, does energy you recover during braking pay back that additional investment? And the answer is, it depends entirely how much braking energy you are dealing with or how often. Here is honest way to think about it. If your application breaks infrequently, once or twice in hour or less, the annual energy required is relatively small, and the payback period for the higher capital cost might be 50 to 20 years. Okay, that's not make financial sense. But you have an application that's break frequently, a mine hoist going up and down many times per shift, an overhead crane going dozen of load cycle per hour, a centrifuge with rapid batch cycling or winding machine frequently continuously operating continuously. The energy recovered in year can be sustained. Okay, in those cases payback periods 3 to 6 years are achievable. Over a 15 years equipment life cycle, the regenerative unit saves significant money. Beyond the energy saving, consider this: every hour a braking register is running hot is an hour where somewhere eventually needs to replace it. High duty register in heavy industrial application fail every 2 or 4 years in some cases. A regenerative unit has no register to replace. The maintenance cost difference add to the financial case. So regenerative units real application where they win. Let me tell you about the application where the regenerative units are not just a good options, they are clearly correct engineering choice. Mine hoist and winders are the classic examples. A mine hoist descent hundreds of meters underground, lowering a fully loaded cage. The entire descent is a regenerative event. Gradually, gravity is continuously driving the motor, and the motor must resist that with control electrical braking. With a standard drive and a resistor, all that gravitational potential energy become heat in a resistor somewhere. With the regenerative drive, it goes back to the grid. In a large mine hoist operating 24 hours in a day, this is enormous amount of energy. Overhead cranes and granary cranes in steel mills, ports, and heavily industrial facilities, where the crane lowers heavy load many times per hour, every shift. The lowering phase is regenerative. A higher duty registers in this application. This is a thermal management nightmare, a maintenance burden. A regenerative units solve both problems. Downhill conveyor, common in mining and quarrying, where the load belts run downhill and the drive must continuously resist the load tendency to accelerate. This is the continuous regenerative load, not intermittent. A register would need to be rated for the full continuous power of the motor. That is very large, a very hot resistor that's on all the time. A regenerative unit is the sensible choice. Okay, the large centrifuges with rapid batch cycling. Okay, the large centrifuges with rapid batch cycling, a pharmaceutical, chemical, and food, where the machine stop, load, spins, stop, underloads, and repeats dozens of times per shift. High duty, high energy, high playback potential. Okay. Next, paper, textile, and winding machine drives, where the unwinding roll is braking continuously while the winding roll is motoring, and the both drive can share energy through the common DC bus. We will talk about that in a DC in a moment. Okay. Next point is safety critical application, crane, hoist, and centrifuges. I want to spend a few minutes on safety critical application, especially because the engineering decision here have two consequences that go beyond money. For the crane and hoist, whenever they are dynamic braking or regenerative, there is one rule that absolute and negotiable. You always you have a mechanical backup brake. Always the electrical braking system, register or regenerative unit provide the normal control deceleration. The mechanical brake, typically an electromagnetic disc brake, is the fail safe that activates if the electrical system trips for any reason. So think about what happens in if your VFD trips on a fault. While a crane is lowering a heavy load without a mechanical backup brake, the load falls. That's a catastrophic safety event. Okay, the mechanical brake must be designed to hold the full suspended load automatically whenever the power is removed from the drive. This is not optional, it is fundamental safety requirement. Okay. For the centrifuges, the concern is different. The kinetic energy stored in fast spinning centrifuge in enormous. If the drive strip mid deceleration and the load cost is uncontrolled to stop, potentially taking a load very long time, very long time, that can be a safety and process issue. Emergency stop system for centrifuges typically include mechanical friction brake as backup. The drive specification often require a minimum guaranteed deaccelerate time even under fault condition. So the 5 question decision framework. All right, let me give you the 5 question I ask when I am specifying a braking register solution for a high interior application. Work through the same in order. You will land on right answer almost every time. So question 1, is this continuous regenerative load? Meaning is the load continuously pushing energy back into drive, not just during deacceleration event, but during steady operation. A crane lowering a load, a downhill conveyor, a mine hoist descending. If yes, you need a regenerative solution. A register for continuous duty is technically possible but thermally demanding and economically proof. My next question 2, how many times does this load break per hour? Fewer than 10 times per hour on a relatively large load, and you are probably in dynamic braking territory. For than 20 or 30 times per hour. Get that energy number and evaluate region seriously. Okay. My question is next question. Question 3 is, what is the motor power? Below 15 kilowatts, dynamic braking is almost always right choice regard of duty cycle. The energy involved in small enough that registers are cheap and practical. Above 75 kilowatts with significant braking duty, the region case almost always deserve a serious look. Between 50 to 75 kilowatts, the duty cycle and operating hours decide it. So my question 4 is, how are there power quality requirements? Are there power quality requirements? If your facility has harmonic distortion regulation, meet the, or if you pay power factor penalty charges to the utility, regenerative units adds value beyond just braking, and that extra value should be counted in your comparison. Okay. My next question 5 is, what is the equipment life cycle? Are you specifying a short term solution for a 3 years project or 15 years plant installation? A higher upfront cost on a regenerative units makes much more sense over a 15 years life cycle than a 3 years one. The payback period matters relative to how long the equipment will run. So next point is 6 mistake engineers make with braking system. Let me share the 6 most common mistakes I see when engineers and technicians specify and commission braking system. These are from the real experience. I've either seen them in the field or heard about them their colleagues. Mistake 1, not calculating the duty cycle before sizing the register. Engineers select a register based on the motor peak braking power, but not account for how often braking actually happens. The result is register that's correctly sized for peak power but thermally undersized for the duty cycle. It overheats and thermal cut out trips, or worse, it burn out. Mistake 2. Going below the drive is minimum resistance limit. Selecting a power lower resistance, selecting a lower resistance than the drive specifies, thinking it will give stronger braking. What it actually does is push too much current through the braking chopper transistors. An expensive internal drive component, this can destroy the chopper. Always check the minimum resistance value in your drive manual before selecting a resistor. Okay. Mistake 3. Mounting the resistor inside a sealed panel. We talk about this. Resistor get very hot. A sealed enclosure turn into an oven. The thermal cutout trips almost immediately under any significant braking load. Mount the resistor in ventilated space always. Okay. Mistake number 4. Not connecting the thermal cutout to the drive. The resistor has thermal cutout contact for a reason. So the drive knows if the resistor has gone offline. If you don't wire it to the drive as an external fault, the drive will keep running normally until the next deacceleration. When it's tripped on overvoltage with no obvious reason, wire it up. 5 minutes of commissioning effort that saves hours of head stretching. Mistake number 5. Assuming the regenerative units does not need a mechanical brake for hoist. I covered this in safety section, but it's worth repeating as a mistake I've seen almost happen in the field. The regenerative units provide electrical braking. It does not replace the mechanical fail-safe, always mechanical. Okay, brake for hoisting applications. Mistake 6. Not checking if your VFD already has a built-in braking chopper. Many modern VFDs up to a certain power rating have the braking chopper transistor built in. Some engineers order a separate external chopper module that they don't need. Okay, they check the drive specification before purchasing external hardware. You may only need the external resistors. Next point, shared DC bus, the equivalent multi-device solution. Before I give you my final verdict, I want to talk about a solution that not enough people know about. Okay, when it fits, it's genuinely the most elegant engineering answer. In the multi-device installation, meaning system where you have several VFDs running different motor, there is a way to share regenerative energy between drives without sending it back to the grid or burning it in a register. Okay, it is called shared DC bus or most common DC bus system. Okay, concept is simple. Instead of each drive having its own separate connection to the supply, its own separate DC bus, all the drives in the system are connected to the single common DC bus. One active front end unit supplies and manages that shared bus. All the individual drive inverter section connect to it. Now here is elegant part. When one drive is breaking, say unwinding, roll a winding machine, it puts regenerative energy into the shared DC bus. At the time another drive is motoring the winding roll that pulling the material needs power. That motoring drive takes power directly from the said DC bus. The regenerative energy from the one drive goes directly to feed other drive. Okay, without even going back to the grid and without being burned in resistor. A single active front end unit only needs to supply the net difference. The imbalance between the motoring and regenerative device in balance winder and unwinder system. That imbalance might be small enough that the front end unit barely does any work at all. Shared DC bus systems are common in winder-unwinder machines, crane system with multiple axles, paper mills, textile machine, and large coordinated multicolor system. If you are specifying 4 or more drives in a coordinated system with mixed motoring and braking duties, this is architectural. It's worth a serious look. So final engineer's checklist. Alright, we cover a lot of ground today. Let me give you clear verdict. Choose a dynamic braking resistors when your braking is infrequent and intermediate. Your motor is small, say under 30 to 50 kilowatts. Okay, your budget is constrained. Your need is simple and quick commissioning solution, and your duty cycle is low enough that register replacement every few years is acceptable. Fans, centrifuges, and light duty conveyors test stand and DBR is typically your friend. Okay, so choose regenerative braking unit when you have continuous regenerative load, a crane, hoist, mine, lift, or downhill conveyor, or when your braking duty cycle is high and the motor is large enough that the energy recovery ROI makes sense. Okay, also choose regenerative units when the power quality matters, when harmonic and power factor are part of your specification. Consider a set DC bus when you have multiple coordinated with drives with mixed motoring and braking duties, and you want the most energy efficient system architecture with the lowest total installed hardware cost. Consider hybrid when you need the energy efficiency of regenerative energy but also need backup braking part for safety critical application. So in this video, clear up something you have been confused about or confirmed a decision you were already learning toward. Hit the like button and share this with an engineer or technician if on your team who works with drive, and subscribe if you want this or if you want content at this level of depth on regular basis. Okay, drop your application in comments, motor size, load, type of so I will give you my read on which solution fits. Okay, see you in next one. So thank you very much.